reallocation of resources is very sticky. With high certainty, when you look at where we allocate, to a high degree, it's often the same every year, year on year. Deallocation is a strength and a discipline to decide what to eliminate or let go of. And I think a useful framework to inform your strategy is to ask the question, when we zoom out over the next 5 years, what will be enduring from our client's perspective, what will be emerging, and what will be eroding? And you can use those 3 time horizons to inform your moves and your decisions today in terms of what to acquire, but also what to divest.
So let's wrap up our time with crushing BMI. We have a couple questions in the chat around BMI. One is, what's Wipfli's BMI? We had about 3/4 of the audience that upvoted that particular one here, and I think it resonated with not only me, but obviously a lot of others too. And you've done a lot of work with the Big Four and some other CPA consulting firms. A lineal you mentioned, so maybe take that however you want. What's Wipfli's BMI?
Probably too high. I can't give an exact figure, but usually
we agree with that.
So it's usually too high, and that's built because it's built over you've got nearly 100-year legacy. It's complexity adding on to complexity. Often we have multiple legacy systems. We also have different geographies, different demographics in the room. All of this creates complexity, and the reality is, despite all the hype and hysteria about AI, around three-quarters of companies have still to derive value, not just from AI, but also from reducing the BMI. So I think 1, BMI is probably too high. 2, a really great next step is to actually get everybody to share their BMI score, because that will, you can work out the average of the room, and that will tell you. And if it's over 60%, that's already too high. Of course, we expect the BMI is never going to be 0, but usually there's excess BMI. Remember at the beginning of my talk, I spoke about some research I've been involved in, where on average we work around 2,100 hours a week. Some of us do, a year. A year, of which about 1/3 is wasted on excess BMI. So, for example, Shopify in Canada introduced a meeting plug-on, so that when you do meeting invites, this plug-in on the meeting invite comes up and it automatically has calculated the financial cost of that meeting based on the average salaries of the room. And they've saved about $100 million already in the last year from introducing that tool. And that's one of the biggest sources of BMI is too many meetings, too many Zooms. We're stacking them back to back. And that gives us a false sense of productivity. It's the difference between transactional work and transformational. So you need to have a conversation about BMI, benchmark what it is. I think it's probably too high, and then work out how to reduce it, automating, augmenting, simplifying, eliminating. And that needs to be done in a deliberate way all the time, quarterly basis, because that BMI is always creeping up. Around, just in the US, we're wasting $17 trillion a year on BMI. I mentioned San Francisco, it takes them 235 days at City Hall to get the first interview. And they've got a 30% talent gap.
Mm-hmm. Mike and I were talking at one of the 3-minute sections about engagement letters. We were talking about the meetings, and you mentioned the FOMO versus JOMO. And I think, Pinch, you're going to be on the measuring the cost of our meetings, so we can see that when we're all accepting meetings, and the freedom potentially to not. Anyway, maybe we should wrap with our time because we're at the end of it. How about we give Terrence one more thanks for being here.